Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Caderna podcast. I'm your host, Brian Caderna, and I'm happy to have you with us. So today we're going to be featuring one of our special guests, who is none other than Dr. Denise Wunderler. For those of you who aren't familiar with that name, Dr. Denise has a very unique background and an extremely impactful story that she'll be sharing with us today. Please allow me to give you a quick bio before we dive into today's discussion. So Dr. Denise Wunderler is a sports medicine physician. She graduated from the Kansas City University of Medicine and Biosciences and then completed her family medicine residency and sports medicine fellowship within the renowned Cleveland Clinic. Prior to her medical training, she graduated from Muhlenberg College in Pennsylvania, where she played collegiate basketball for 4 years and served as the team captain. She then worked as a research scientist for Merck in New Jersey for about 6 years before going to medical school in Kansas City. Since then, Dr. Denise has been the team physician for the USA Volleyball team and the FIVB for the past 11 years. She's a proud mother of 3, including her youngest daughter, Vienna, who sadly passed away at just 2 years old without explanation. Since then, she's become the founder and president of her family's 501c3 nonprofit, Team Vienna for SUDC Awareness. If you're not familiar with SUDC, that stands for Sudden Unexplained Death in Childhood. She's also the co-founder of the SUDC Coalition. Because of her family's tragedy, Dr. Denise works tirelessly educating the medical community and the general public worldwide about Vienna's story and SUDC. She's extremely passionate about finding some of the root causes for sudden unexplained death in childhood, which the medical school curriculum does not touch on. So as you can tell, this becomes a very emotional conversation that we have, but it's an important message that I think everybody needs to hear. And there's also some really interesting things that we're going to learn about from her diverse background. So without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Denise Wunderler.
Podcast.
The Caderna Podcast.
Dr. Denise, thanks for joining the show.
Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. We're always happy to get a new voice, and you have quite a background there. So it sounds like you keep awfully busy.
Yes, very busy. That's for sure.
What's the latest been? I know right before we hopped on air, we were talking about this summer and this whole year with COVID. It's just been wild.
Yes, it has been. I know. And, with the homeschooling with the kids, that's been interesting. And then I know we did talk about my husband who contracted COVID. He's an ER physician, and he contracted COVID in the early days when things were really heating up here in Jersey. So that was in March. And then we tried to take care of him the best we could for about 12 days until he just couldn't breathe anymore. And symptoms just became worse no matter what we did. So he was in the hospital for a week and then hung out at home for about 8 days. And then that warrior that he is went back to work to see patients.
Wow.
So he's pretty incredible. Yeah, but it's crazy. Even 4.5 months out now, he still has some breathing issues. And that's obviously what we're seeing with COVID now, this, these late symptoms that just continue on. It's pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it seems like so much of it is just a big unknown. So it's frightening to say the least. And so did he get any treatment for that? Like, did he go through the, any of the plasma treatments or any of that new stuff that's kind of out there right now?
So, he offered to donate his plasma, although he did not get called. But sure, during the treatment period, he had all the typical medications that were being given at the time, which at this point, they've changed a little bit since then because, there's no true treatment for COVID yet.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's kind of a recycling and repurposing other medications for other diseases.
Yeah, it seems kind of like a trial by fire, which
It is. And you have people from, all over the world who really helped us. I mean, during the time that he was in the hospital, I was, thanks to Facebook and social media, I was in contact with doctors across the country as well as others across the world, asking them what's working for them, what's not working, because anything else that I would get from any other type of news source really, it was hard to know what was true, what wasn't true, and misinformation was out there. So I kind of wanted to go to the source, which are the treating physicians. And, so many people in the world really helped us out, not just with medical advice, but also with support, prayers, just knowing that they're cheering for him. And he also did some funny Facebook posts, actually. So even though it was serious because it's COVID, yet he put a really interesting comedic spin on it, which really grasped a ton of fans really from around the globe. It was pretty amazing, actually.
Wow.
And so that it was pretty cool. Yeah. So
Yep.
that definitely helped him out too.
I think if you can keep that sense of humor in some of the toughest of times, that's invaluable. That's a great trait to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. So he really turned a very, very serious, very scary situation into kind of a funny situation. And people would say, oh my gosh, I'd be crying and sad in one moment and then laughing the next moment because he would say or do something. So, which of course helped everybody, especially our family during just a really tough time. And, because, and I know we'll talk about my daughter who died almost 3 years ago, and then my Vienna, and then my sister died in November 2019. And so then, and she was 54, cancer diagnosis at stage 4. And so now we're in early April, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, please let's not have another death in our family within the last, 2.5 years. So it was a tough time, but I think we're a resilient family, and we're I'm trying to teach the kids. We are trying to teach the kids that we can survive anything that life has to throw at us, and that we have to continue to do our best, no matter what gets thrown in our path.
And that's the thing, honestly, I find so impressive and admirable, is that you've gone through a lot, but you always just keep this positive attitude. And at least it appears that way in everyday life, where you're always, happy, trying to do something new, trying to do something, productive, as obviously your husband is as well, going right back to work.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. We're trying to be a good example. Thank you. And we're trying to be a good example for our kids, especially our surviving kids, because they're going through a lot as well. And we're trying to give them a stable household as best we can. But it's tough when, the little sister dies of no explanation and we don't have a reason yet. So, we're doing our best.
And how old are your kids now?
So my surviving kids, they're 10 and 8. And the time that Vienna died, they were 5 and 7.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how are you feeling now I assume that they've been home like everybody else since March, and are they going back to school? Or are they doing the hybrid, or what's the story for your guys?
Yeah. Great question. Honestly, it seems to keep changing. I thought it was a hybrid situation, and then a parent told me something different. So I honestly, personally, I would love for them to be in school again. And I think the hybrid model would work the best, for our home situation. So hopefully that happens. But honestly, I don't get too crazy about that, because with times changing so much, it seems almost every day. So, it's kind of, people say, hey, Denise, how are you doing this? I'm like, I just kind of fight the fire of the day. And so whatever happens when school starts, it'll probably change maybe even the day before school starts.
Yeah, probably.
Who knows? But, I'm just going to take the waves as they come, figure it out, and go from there, because, our world has been so turned upside down after Vienna died. So it's almost like, I feel like we can handle anything. We will figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's definitely some crazy times.
Yes, it is.
So what have you been up to, I guess, most recently? I know you've done so much with the nonprofit that your family set up. And have you had anything big this summer? Because I know, being involved in a lot of different boards myself, it's like we had to cancel everything. And it's just been such a weird time, save for maybe a golf outing here or there. But how are you guys doing with the nonprofit and everything?
Yeah, well, still great, because it's all about awareness, education. So, we did have of course, Vienna's Day of International SUDC Awareness in May, and that's essentially, it's local, but it's around the world. So it's kind of already virtual. So that really didn't change too much, except we were going to join a race with Mary's Place by the Sea in Ocean Grove that particular day. But of course, everything got canceled and postponed because of COVID. But we still continued on with a very small walk with some close friends in our local neighborhood. And then people from all over the world would, walk, run, hike, bike, climb, max challenge, whatever, do different things on that one particular day, and then wearing a Team Vienna shirt or holding a sign, and then taking a picture and posting on social media. So it's always cool. This is now the second year in a row where we had all 7 continents represented, which is really amazing. Yeah, and including Antarctica. And now I've got some friends of friends down there who are kind of passing the torch every year. So I hope that continues for next year. Because yeah, so, and it's really because of people who I know. You know, it's really been a real big blessing for that particular event. So so we've done that now 3 years in a row. And so that continued to carry on. And it seems, you know, even though I'm not really great with asking for donations, but people seem to still donate, which I love, obviously, because you need money for nonprofits. And I know you're a financial guy, and like, Dr. Denise, why are you saying that? But but it's the truth. You know, I really want people to know about SUDC, and I think, you know, things will kind of progress as they're supposed to. So that was one big thing in May that we did. And actually,
if I could interrupt you there, because I know we're talking quite a bit about SUDC, and that's something you're passionate about. Can you just kind of define what exactly that is for our listeners?
Yeah, so SUDC is Sudden Unexplained Death in Childhood. And so this is a category of death in kids 1 to 18 years old, so it does include the teenagers, where after a thorough investigation, autopsy, medical record review, there's still no explanation for the deaths of these kids. And that's where my daughter Vienna, you know, fell almost 3 years ago now here in Homedale, where she was watching TV with her brother and sister and her babysitter. And it had appeared she'd fallen asleep while watching TV, you know, a little, almost 7 p.m. or so. And then she stopped breathing. And so that was the most horrible phone call, obviously, when my husband and I were driving home from a wedding at 7:02, get the phone call from our babysitter with this news. And so,
wow.
yeah, and actually we with both of us being physicians, you know, we never heard of SUDC before, which is really surprising and shocking, because everyone's heard of SIDS, you know, but SIDS are the babies less than 1 year old who die with no explanation after a thorough investigation, autopsy, medical record review. You know, so this is essentially SIDS because it's all unexplained but thoroughly investigated, but just in the older kids. So that's you know, that's really tough. I mean, you know, we cry, we shed tears every day, all different amounts, you know, because she's not here, and the, you know, this void that we feel in our family, and the fact that we don't have an explanation. You know, we have no idea why this happened. So that all those reasons, and knowing that there's going to be other families, unfortunately, you know, sadly, in the future, this is going to happen too. And so, you know, if we can do something to try to prevent this, find causes, prevent this from happening to other families, because it's at least one kid, you know, 1 to 18 years old a day. So it's about, we think, around 400 kids in the US a day. And it's like, I flip the calendar and I think to myself, well, okay, there's 30 days this month. 30 families are going to be devastated this month. Like, that's how I think. I mean, it's horrible.
Wow.
So I have all these inspirations really to really make a difference and really propel this cause forward in the biggest way I know how, with the help of other people.
And I would imagine, like you said, everyone seems to be familiar with SIDS and, you know, obviously infants, but the range between a 1 year old and an 18-year-old, their body is so vastly different, you know, that I mean, there's literally no explanation, or is it similar things, whether it's cardiovascular or breathing, or is there any kind of like, I guess, being a total novice here, like kind of like a category or window that usually falls in for that broad age group?
Well, see, yeah, that's the thing. You know, the most common age group for SUDC are the toddlers, right? 1 to 4. And
Okay.
that's where Vienna, you know, lies. And then you have the second highest are the teenagers, 15 to 18 years old. But 60% of them
Really?
or so that we think are in the toddler age. And so you think, well, SIDS supposedly, you know, goes up to 1. But here's the thing. It's not, oh, your child is 1 year old. This is what everybody thinks, Brian. You know, you think, well, when you have kids, you know, you have to be super cautious in the first 3 months of life, because if they have a fever, it's this whole huge workup. So like for 3 months, I always keep the kids at home. Then after that, I feel a little bit more comfortable. And then as the child approaches 1 year old, you think, okay, cool. You know, we don't have to use the monitor anymore if you don't want to. Things appear to be safe. We're not in any kind of danger of any crazy, thing happen. But really, I think it's a continuum. I mean, because really, how can it just stop at age 1? It can't.
Yeah.
And I think this is partly what this is showing us, that, goes up to age 1 for SIDS, but then you have this continuum up to age 4 of the highest, numbers for SUDC kids. But then why does it jump up to teenagers, 15 to 18 years old? And then, that's about 20% of the kids. And then between 5 and 14 are, the other kids that are the, the other 20%, so it's, there are some theories when it comes to research. There's not a lot of research on this. There's a no targeted SUDC funding from government agencies, but there are some studies going on. But what they're finding is that febrile seizures, which in medicine we're taught to be benign, and in medical school it's how we're taught, but we're seeing that of these SUDC kids, that there is a higher incidence, a higher family history, higher child history of having these febrile seizures with sudden unexplained death in childhood. So this is kind of a huge advance, really, where it could potentially be up to 60%. There was one study, it was only 20 kids. It was 20 brains that were donated, and Vienna's was one of them. And of those 20 kids, 12 of those 20 had a history of febrile seizures, and Vienna had a history of these supposed to be benign seizures. So that was one big thing in the research, as well as in the brain, and this is for the people who are scientifically driven, in the hippocampus, which has a part amongst its various functions, plays a part in the breathing mechanisms. So could it be that with some abnormalities of this very small area of the brain, could that then, then in the end have some type of electrical stimulation that would then cause sudden death? And the thing so those are the main two things in terms of research that has been found. But on autopsy, the problem is that you cannot tell. I mean, you can have clues, but it can't really be confirmed whether the person had a seizure when they died, and then also an arrhythmia, so an abnormal heart rhythm. So that's where genetic studies are so important, and really looking at everything, whether it's, is it a cardiac problem, is it neurological, dealing with seizures, or some other mechanism, infectious, genetic, is it acquired, environmental, could it be maybe a mix of one or more of these things, together, where, in some kids, this happens and we don't know why, but 99.9% of the kids would probably be fine with various insults or various, environmental factors, but maybe with some, a small part of the population of the kids, for whatever reason, they can't handle whatever insult that was, and then they just suddenly die, and there's no in between ground.
So
it's a really
is there some sort of, I guess, treatment or solution now, knowing that there's at least a correlation there between those seizures and SUDC, or is that pretty much just a finding that now we know it's there, but we don't really know yet how to prevent that from progressing to a sudden death?
Right, and that's the thing, right? So we know that there's no causes, no preventive strategies yet, but we're just seeing these correlations, and honestly, from a personal standpoint, so you have something called sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, SUDEP, okay, SUDEP, and this has been in the news more recently in the last year or so, with a couple of actors who have died, who have had a history of epilepsy, a known seizure disorder, and then when they die unexpectedly, it's notified. It's called SUDEP, sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. So some of the similar findings in those patients they're seeing in sudden in SUDC kids, and also SIDS actually. And what's making me think, could it be that these febrile seizures that we're taught about in medical school as benign entities, kids 6 months to 6 years old have these when there's a rapid rise of the fever, and then they could potentially have a seizure. Could these benign seizures be actually a subset of epilepsy? And so are all these kids really SUDEP, where it's really, a true seizure disorder? I don't know, that hasn't been proven, but this is just me thinking, could that be the answer? We don't know. Or another one would be, of course, a dysrhythmia that would lead into an arrhythmia of the heart. So honestly, when I tell people that Vienna died, of course, everybody, a lot of people start to ponder the questions, which I appreciate because, everybody's thought is valid because since we don't have any true answers. And always the first question is cardiac. It's got to be cardiac. But not necessarily, there's a lot of different factors that are involved. So there's a lot that needs to be done. But we are in 3 different studies, actually.
That's what I wanted to ask in
Yeah.
regards to those studies, even before we get into them. So
Yeah.
if you can maybe kind of pull back the curtain and let people know, like, how do these studies, how do these examinations transpire? Because what I would imagine is something horrific like that happens, that there's an extremely thorough autopsy examination and then record keeping of every piece of data or metric that they could track. And then I assume that they pool those with everybody else that had, that fell to SUDC. Is that kind of how it works? Like, where is the hub of all that information? And then who kind of leads the charge on trying to figure out what to do next?
Right. And those are all great questions. So now as far as thorough, so thorough is a very relative word, especially when it comes to death scene investigations of kids. So you can have, there's no protocol, which is really unfortunate. And people are working on that, which is wonderful because that really needs to be done. So you can have one county versus another county, state to state, and they can have different protocols for the medical examiner dealing with a child. So that by itself gives a lot of variability. And what they run in the death certificate, is a huge issue as well. So you have to have a pathologist or medical examiner be okay with saying, I don't know why this child died, why this teenager died, and truly put undetermined and ask colleagues, say, hey, look, I found nothing. Like in Vienna's autopsy, it was completely, she found nothing. And, that's when the medical examiner has to say, wow, I found nothing. Let me consult, a couple other of my colleagues and, show the slides. Do you see anything? If the answer is no, to say, wow, I don't see anything. This is truly undetermined. Versus what sometimes happens, Brian, is that they'll put some other minor ailment, whether it's maybe there's some mild pneumonia in the child or something else, and then they'll list that on the death certificate, and then automatically that becomes the cause of death. And then that particular child's records and everything doesn't ever get labeled as unexplained. It actually gets labeled as explained. So judging from that, now you have numbers that are not correct. And there's no code to code a fully investigated death of a child 1 to 18 years old. There's a code for SIDS, which is helpful, but there's still problems with that as well. And truly knowing the incidence. And if you don't know the true incidence in terms of if it doesn't appear like enough kids are affected, then people don't really view it as a problem, and then not a lot happens. So there's a lot of issues with this whole situation, and wondering who's leading the charge. That's the thing. There is no one particular department where we're saying, okay, this is caused by blank. So there's no one department leading the charge. That's why you have these different groups, different places. Okay, well, you need to have a pathologist in case there's some neurologic issue. You need to have a cardiologist. You need to have the different infectious disease doctors also involved. To try to put this together, because it's really multifactorial. I believe it's going to be. This is a very complex situation. So,
and I feel like you're almost, not to switch gears too much, but I feel like you're almost seeing that play out right now on the national stage with COVID. That you're seeing these numbers every single day of positives and deaths, and then you're hearing, oh, he died of COVID, but he was 95 and was fighting heart failure for the past 6 months, and it's so hard to see. Well, there's 150,000 deaths there, but what is each one of those statistics? And I guess that's always the issue with medicine and tracking any data for that matter.
Right, exactly. And
it's a complex issue.
It's totally complex. And and I definitely agree with you with the whole COVID thing. And I don't really watch the news, but my patients actually in my clinic, they're awesome. They educate me on some of the things that they learn. And one of them has to do with whether to put COVID on the death certificate or not. And so there's a lot of apparently some debate about that because there's money involved. And so I don't know the details about that to talk about it, but it's just an interesting time, and who knows what the true numbers really are going to be. We don't know.
Yep. Yeah, and unfortunately, I think the whole thing with COVID, like you said, one, there's money involved, which will always change, some
Mhm.
thought processes, and two, so much of it is becoming politicized right now.
Right.
So hopefully, I don't think SUDC is anywhere in that platform. So hopefully, it can be more of a true science and study and not be manipulated. But what ultimately what inspired you to start your family's 501c3? I know you went through something so traumatic that you hope never ever happens to anyone. And what's, I guess, we know what the impetus was, but what's maybe the goal there? What are you hoping to do for your family with your Team Vienna for SUDC awareness?
Well, the fact that no one heard of this when Vienna died, not even my husband and I, who are both physicians, and we're not out from medical school 50 years, right? So, we graduated but 16 years ago, right? So we're pretty recent, but not so much. And so the
Mhm.
fact that we never even heard of this was shocking to me, so it's shocking to both of us. So that's why we really want to change that. And we kind of started with Team Vienna even before it became a 501c3 when we entered an initial race back in 2018, actually, and then it was a year later turning into an actual nonprofit. And to really increase the awareness and really a lot of the projects that we were already doing right after Vienna died. So we kind of wanted to raise everything, raise the bar, and get the word out in a much bigger way, and be able to hopefully fund research, because when you have a 501c3, then people are more apt to support that part of your mission, which is a huge part of our mission, as well as the educational factor. So and also SUDC is not any that we know about officially in any medical school or residency curriculum for that matter. And so I'm doing grand rounds lectures at hospitals and medical schools, intermittently. And now it's a little more challenging with COVID, but I'm still able to do some, and at least educate those physicians, and then hopefully then they will tell other physicians and other students, and then hopefully this will allow them to be able to have a more wise thought in their mind when this does happen to one of their patients. They can say, oh, I've heard of this, and this is how I can support you. And then also maybe this will incite um, inspiration in others to do research. So it's kind of
Okay.
multi-level, and obviously, of course, remembering Vienna, because that's one thing where she's so little, and with any of these kids, we want people to talk about her still, even though she's deceased. And death is tough to talk about, right? I mean, who really wants to talk about it?
Yeah,
you know,
that's
I mean,
yeah, I give you all the credit in the world for even bringing it up.
I
And
mean,
so
but
the awareness that you're trying to drive, it's more in the medical community.
So, that's a lot of it, but it's also in the general public as well, which is where, Vienna's Day of International SUDC Awareness every May, where that lies, where this is people from all over the world who, a lot of them are not medical, they're not scientists. It's the general public who also needs to know about that. Everyone needs to know. So that when it does happen, that people are aware, oh, SUDC does happen, and, there are groups, nonprofits who can help. And one of them is, obviously my nonprofit Team Vienna, but then the SUDC coalition. So if I talk to a new parent, because people are always sending parents to me and saying, oh my gosh, they don't even know what to do. And I try to help and guide them the best I can, to various research studies, and even just getting support, because, when no one's heard of this, people want to put you in a SIDS category. And but you can say, well, my child was 18 years old or 11 years old. And, it's kind of hard to be in a SIDS group when your child is much older. So
Sure.
yeah, there's a lot that we would like to do.
So when you go out and raise awareness, which I'm all for, and I get that, but I think the thing that um, I guess I would say I would kind of struggle with, and trying to find a way to help, is with, let's take breast cancer for instance, and you say we want to get awareness out there. We understand this can happen to so many women out there, and we need to find a cure, raise funds for research, and so forth. With
Right.
something that you're already identifying as unknown, it's I would struggle, or I imagine other people would, with like, well, if we raise funds, what do you research, or how do you find a cure for something when you don't even know really what the problem is, if that makes sense?
Right. No, absolutely, absolutely. Which is why I look to the expertise of the researcher. So we are involved with 3 different research studies, and one of them is up in Boston, Boston Children's at Harvard. And so, they kind of take a multi-specialty approach where, they're looking at the medical records, they're looking at the, all the tissue results from the medical examiner and genetics, and kind of putting it all together, looking at what's called the family pedigree, where you're looking at various medical problems of all different everybody in the family and the extended family, to see is there a genetic link with diseases, and is there higher, like say febrile seizures is a perfect example, where if there's a higher incidence of febrile seizures in a family, there's a greater chance of a child or a person 1 to 18 years old dying of sudden unexplained death in childhood, even if it's in the family. So, but that's the problem, is that there is not one that's leading the charge. But luckily we're at the point where there are, a couple of those findings with the hippocampus, like I mentioned, febrile seizures, even with viruses. So we're finding that, of these SUDC kids, at least half of them have some type of a virus found on autopsy. Okay. And it's at least 50%. I'm sure it's going to be much higher than that. So there is a potential study that's going to be started, revolving around that. And, like why is it that some kids, maybe some kids will die of, a viral induced immune response, whereas in most kids they would be fine. But why in some kids would that happen? And then the end result is death. So there is definitely, a smattering of if that's the right word to use, of different types of research going on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's multifaceted, so it is quite a challenge. But there are some great studies, that are happening, and even a more of a cardiac focused study that's going around nationwide, and that's the sudden death in the young registry. So we're enrolled through Vanderbilt, and then there's another study at NYU as well. So they're kind of all looking at various aspects. Some of them overlap, but then they all also have their own individual expertise that they can really hopefully drive this forward and find some more answers.
Yeah, it's the more we talk here, I'm like, man, the field of medicine is just incredible, because it could go in a million different directions and permutations, and it just kind of never end, I guess, and as far as research and finding something new.
Absolutely. And that's what's been interesting to me too, where, I've learned so much. I'm a sports medicine physician, so that's always been, that kind of medicine is unbelievably fun,
Yeah.
And sports, who doesn't love sports? I was an
Yep.
athlete all my life, and, it's a fun thing to do. And when you add that to medicine, oh my gosh, it's my dream job,
Yep.
But obviously now I've taken a different turn a little bit, still doing my sports medicine roots, because I still love that so much. But obviously now there's something incredibly personal that I really need to focus on as well. So I kind of do a couple different things at once. And
Yep.
yeah, so but this has been a huge learning curve for me too, because like I said, who really loves to learn about death? I don't think many people even love to talk about it, right? So and that's one thing that I think is interesting also, with lectures, and there's a lecture that I gave last fall. Actually, it was a TED style talk actually in Baltimore. It's called OMED. It's a national physicians conference. And so it was about maybe 23 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I did 5 slides to kind of cue me, because honestly, if I'm just talking without a bunch of slides, because I get upset sometimes during my lectures, and I'm afraid I'm going to forget what I'm going to say because it's just such a personal and emotional topic. So, but what I did before this particular talk, about a 20-minute talk, is I actually played guitar and I sang, which is not what doctors do at conferences. But
So that was your warm up to your TED Talk?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, talk about my heart beating out of my chest, warm up. But yeah, because, I wrote this message to my daughter, and then her favorite musician, within a couple of days, after I sent it to him, and I didn't ask him to do anything, he created an amazing song. So this is like 2 months after she died. I wrote all these words down, and then the song was created, and then that inspired me to take guitar, to also help with grief. And so then when it came time for my talk, I'm trying to think of what would draw more attention, because I can honestly say, Brian, before my daughter died, do you think I would really gravitate towards a talk about death and someone's child dying? I wouldn't, unless I knew the person personally. I'll just be honest, I wouldn't, because heck, I'm going to go to an ACL, knee surgery type of lecture, or a rotator cuff or concussion, something that's to me a lot more interesting. But
Yeah.
then obviously when it happens to you, then you have a very different view about it. And
Sure.
so I'm trying to get more people to care about the cause, and to care about my daughter, and to care about all these kids who have died, and kids in the future who unfortunately and very tragically will die. So
Yeah.
that's why I said, you know what, I need to step outside my comfort zone in a major way and step on this stage with my guitar. My guitar instructor helped me, thank goodness, and played the first verse of this song. And, maybe about a minute and a half. And then after that was done, then I carried on with my lecture. So I was hoping, and I think it worked. I think that kind of grasped more people's attention, and that was the whole purpose for it.
Yeah, I imagine at a medical conference that would be awfully memorable. So
Yeah, it
uh,
was definitely different, but I think people
yep.
appreciated it, And
Yeah,
again,
definitely. I'm sure
such
it's
a tough
stuck.
topic. Yeah, it's such a
Yeah.
tough topic.
So what is I know we're talking a lot about SUDC here because you have such personal experience with it, but what is the coalition? For those of us that aren't aware, what is the SUDC coalition?
Yeah, so this is a pending 501c3 nonprofit, and this was started by another amazing, passionate mom, sadly SUDC mom, who lost her little girl Vale back in September of last year. And so she's in Colorado, and so she and I got together and said, you know what, we really want to push this cause forward in a major way. We feel that we really need to push forward the awareness, education, and find more research, maybe start some research projects, to really get this rolling. And because some has been done in the past, but gosh, we need so much more. And so this is a collective of nonprofits, parents, doctors, researchers, individuals, pretty much anybody who wants to support this cause and help in any way that they feel comfortable, pooling resources, working together, as a team to accelerate these things. So this is something that we just founded in March. And we have a nice group of passionate people. So eventually we're looking to grow that and do more. So together working with other nonprofits. So it's very
Okay.
exciting time.
Got it. Yeah, it definitely sounds that way. And so do you guys have some goals, like some actual concrete goals or marks that you're hoping to hit, whether it be fundraising, certain papers published, any particular goals that we could point out here?
So, I think, number one, we are starting to already attain one of the goals, actually, which is getting SUDC into the medical school curriculum. And actually, that is just actually an article just came out within the last couple of weeks, where the Arkansas College of Osteopathic Medicine confirmed commitment actually earlier in the year that they would definitely incorporate into the curriculum. So I'm working with the dean there to create some modules, and essentially, like I should say, that during the first, second year of med school, it would be some information about SUDC in conjunction with SIDS. Definitely, I think should be taught together, and then reinforce information with a clinical vignette or a clinical case based on Vienna's story, actually, and for the third year students. And actually, that was his idea. I was very touched and honored that he even said that, based on Vienna's story. And so that's definitely one thing that's already happening. So really incorporating more medical schools, because it seems like each medical school has their own curriculum. So I've a couple of calls this week, the school in California, school in New York, and others that are following, to talk about this, to see specifically how we can incorporate it into their curriculum. So it's a yearly, actually in the curriculum, which means it's in it for good. So that's definitely one big goal. Also increasing research. And one thing that we're looking at is fundraising specifically to do whole genome sequencing for kids, and as part of a research study. So because right now what's being done is, with the various research studies, the whole exome sequencing, and that is about probably less than 2% of the whole genome. So it gets a lot of the genes, but doesn't get all of them. And because the whole genome, when you sequence the entire genome, it's a lot more money. So that's where, that's really going to be one of our biggest goals here in the near future, is fundraising for that. And
Okay. And what exactly is that? That's something that would be done on people while they're living, like looking at their genetics, or this is
so
after. Yep.
yes, so to answer, yes, so to answer your question, so we would do it on what's called the trio. So the trio is the mom, biological dad, and the child who died. So
Okay.
in research, we call that the trio. So they're doing trios. So that's kind of like the golden grail of this type of thing. So then you can do the sequencing of the mom, the dad, the child, and see, are there any type of genes that were passed down, or was there a gene that was that's de novo, or just a mutation, spontaneous mutation that occurred in the child who died, and we don't know why, and that's
Hmm.
another thing we'd have to figure out, but at least then it would give us a starting point of, okay, which genes are we talking about? Do we see, this in one family, but do we see it also in 100 other families? Because it's interesting, because, something that I was talking to a researcher recently is that, we can have genes that, that essentially could yield a bad outcome like death, and someone else can have that same exact gene and they're walking around just fine.
Hmm.
So why is that? In some people, that particular gene yields death, in other people, it yields nothing. So
Yeah.
genetics, there's so much that we need to learn in genetics. It's such an amazing field. I remember always enjoying it in college, but
Yep.
there's a lot that needs to be done. So, and that's one thing where, that in our view with the coalition, that's going to be one of our goals, is to fundraise like crazy, and to see how many families, would like to get involved, which,
Yep.
I think there'll be a fair amount who would like to get involved with that. As
Yep.
long as they have DNA banked of their child. That's another thing too. You know, Once your child is gone, they're gone. So unless tissues, DNA was whole blood banked early on, they may not be able to get involved because of that, sadly.
Got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're seeing so much in that now, and I know it's probably a very elementary version of it, but even with these websites that you can go to, like the 23andMe and the other,
Hmm.
find out your heritage, your ancestors, and your genealogy. And then there's some, at least that I've heard of, where you can actually send that to a nutritionist and actually have like a nutrition plan mapped out based on your genetic makeup. And so I feel like there's so many different ways to look at that. It really is a fascinating science.
Yes, it is. And I think, honestly, I think a lot of SUDC, I think the bare bones is going to come from the genes. I think that, we just have to look more, and also, um, not every single gene has been identified. So there's still more work that needs to be done on that whole genome project too. Actually, they're about 99% finished, but um, even still
That's
have a
very
little more to go
interesting.
on that. Yeah, it really
Hmm.
is. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, sharing so much of this with us, because in
Of
my
course.
day-to-day life, obviously I work with a ton of physicians as a financial advisor, and
Right.
the conversations are around, how are we going to get past these student loans, and how do we
Right.
build our practice? How do we start investing? Uh,
Right.
but then, as we talk, you start to really see, physicians just living life with normal ups and downs, and unfortunately some tragedies like this that
Yeah.
take you in a whole nother realm than you ever even thought possible. So I appreciate you opening up and sharing your whole experience with everybody.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. And I think, honestly, with Vienna's tragedy, it really has taught my husband and I especially a lot of different things. And one, I think we are actually better physicians because of what happened to our daughter. And it's sad that that had to happen. But we're trying to do our best to to make everything to learn from our tragedy and help
Yeah.
other people.
And if you don't mind, had you or your husband ever seen anything like this before while practicing as physicians, or was the first exposure your own exposure?
First exposure was our own
Yeah.
tragedy. Yes. Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And not for lack of a better segue, I know you're doing a lot still in sports medicine, which is certainly very popular. Like you said, everybody loves sports,
Yeah.
which unfortunately seem to be kind of on hold or in limbo everywhere right now.
Right.
But you are still active in the sporting community.
Yeah, so I'm actually I'm one of the team physicians for USA Volleyball. And
Okay.
so that's been really fun. And whenever I travel with the team, it's always the highlight of my sports medicine, career, or my sports medicine year. And actually I was supposed to go to Honduras back in June, but of course, all the Olympics, everything was postponed. So that trip was canceled. But what was really cool, so I went to Cuba 2 years ago. It was the men's junior national volleyball team. And they all heard about Vienna, and I brought some Team Vienna shirts, and they were so excited to support Team Vienna, support SUDC. So they all got a T-shirt, and then we took this beautiful picture, and they were wearing the T-shirts all over Havana and the competition
Wow.
gym and everywhere. Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
it was interesting because, of course, when you wear a T-shirt, especially if you're USA, because I mean, it's just you go to these different tournaments, and everybody's looking what USA is doing. It's just how it goes. And so everybody, the referees, the coaches, to athletes, the players, asking, well, what is this Team Vienna? So that was just an amazing opportunity to speak. Even the athletes were such great little advocates for little Vienna and all the other SUDC kids. And just the fact that having a USA team wear these shirts and really acknowledging that SUDC even exists was such a huge boost for so many families, SUDC families, where we know most people haven't even heard of this. So to have a Team USA, and this is a junior national team, acknowledge this, what was so huge. And I remember seeing comments on Facebook and social media when I posted it, and just people just telling me, oh my gosh, just tears welling up in their eyes just seeing this picture. So it was really super special. So
Yeah,
yeah, so
sure.
USA Volleyball, that I've been involved with them for 11 years, and it's such a great organization. I'm really proud to
How
be
did
one
that
of
come about? Like, I know you said you played basketball in college.
right.
Why the transition to, helping out the USA volleyball team?
Right. Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, this was actually back in my sports medicine fellowship year, and it was July of 2008. And
Okay.
and I was asked by my one of my professors in med school who had taught me. He said, "Hey, Denise, would you like to come out to Sandy, Utah, and work these 34 nets, volleyball nets, so 34 matches going on at the same time. This boys junior Olympic tournament." I said, "Oh, wow, sounds so much fun." Absolutely. So they paid for my trip, which was really nice because, when you're a resident, you don't really have a whole lot of money to spend, especially anything
Yeah.
extra. And so, and plus I was working for free. So, volunteering. So they took care of my trip. And then, we would get there, to the gym at like the expo center, 6 o'clock in the morning, stay till like 10 o'clock at night, just taking care of athletes. And, he made me the medical director, sorry, the assistant, sorry. He was the medical director. I was the assistant medical director. And so,
Nice.
gave me some responsibility. Yeah, it was awesome. And so then, so he would, just do other things and kind of, give me the reins to take care of stuff. And then honestly, that was I think it was about a week to 10-day trip or something. I was trying to remember how long. And so pretty much like midway, he's like, pretty much, I didn't realize that this essentially then turned out to be kind of like an audition, which that wasn't
Yeah.
how it originated, but I mean, he's like, I really like what you're doing, all these things. And then said, would you like to, apply to become a team physician for USA Volleyball? I'm like, heck yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, no, it was. So then, got home and then, filled out the paperwork. And yeah, so that's kind of how that started, which is really an incredible
Wow.
opportunity. And I'm so thankful for it. And really, it's truly a highlight. And I can't wait till, the kids get even older and, have them actually travel with me, because I want them to get involved with the team too. And there's just definitely something that many things you can learn from being a part of a team and supporting a team. So I want
Yep.
to get the family involved in that eventually too. But it's
Yeah.
so fun.
And
I
I
love
think
it.
that's why we got to get all our teams back. And real quick, what's your take? Should we be playing sports right now, or is that crazy and dangerous?
Oh my gosh. I guess maybe play sports with masks on.
Yeah. Okay. I guess
Right?
that's a good politically correct answer.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's this is all tough situation, I mean, I understand
Yeah.
there's the economic side, the financial side, and then the infectious disease and the medical side. And I mean, it's like the bashing of two things that are supposed to be completely separate, but now they're getting ingrained together. And
Yep.
I mean, all these small businesses are getting pummeled, and it's just,
Oh my
but then you have
goodness.
all these deaths, and I don't know. I'm just glad I'm not the number one person making the decision. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, yeah, you and me both.
That's a tough position
Yeah,
to be in. Tough
sure
job.
is.
Yeah.
So any parting words or anything else that you might like to share with our guests here today or our
Well,
listeners?
yes, thank you. Well, one thing I just want to touch upon actually is, besides sharing the websites, is, you know, uh, my husband and I sometimes talk about as the financial consequences of child loss. I know this is, you're a financial guy, so this kind of point would be of interest to some of your listeners. But especially for us, you lose a child kind of out of the blue. So we didn't have all those expenses before our child died, like others do who have a long-standing illness, so they have all those medical bills to deal with. Then, in our case, child dies. And then now we have, all the funeral expenses, all that. But then also, not only just that, I mean, that's a given, right? And that's an unexpected cost. But then you look at the loss of wages. So now you have, the parents who have a hard time sometimes going back to their same job. Maybe they have to change jobs, taking time off, usually it's unpaid. And, the financial situation that can cause, where now, in addition to losing your child, because of dying, because of, for us, unexpected, or other parents, they have a cause, but still, it just adds to the stress and the grief and the, just the emotional situation that you're in at the time. And, some people can't even return to their previous job because of flashbacks, or just, emotional memories from that job when their child was alive. And so, and they can't focus, they can't think, that kind of thing. So it's, it's a very tough situation. So I think there are some articles out there that actually give an actual number amount, which is interesting, an actual like financial and monetary amount of how much child loss costs a family, which is kind of interesting to even think about, because I don't think anybody really thinks about that, but parents can take a really big hit because of all the emotions that go into it. So that's
Sure.
something that people, I think, should just kind of be aware of, I guess.
No, thank you for sharing that. And that's one thing too I bring up with all my clients, especially young professionals, is when we talk about disability insurance,
Hmm.
you just never know what's going to happen through the course of life, both physically and mentally. And it could be to yourself or it could be to those around you. And unfortunately, then the next day you can't just wake up and go right back to work, like nothing happened. So,
That's
um,
exactly it. And some people can't take off from work. My husband was only able to take off 2 weeks. My job was unbelievable and so supportive. Really, I was off 2 months or so, and then I kind of gradually started seeing patients. I kind of started off with just kind of hanging around the office just to see if I could handle it,
yeah,
by seeing other kids. And there's so many different, you know, things at play here. And so then I eventually got back into seeing patients, but then eventually we moved, to about an hour away from where my other job was here in Jersey. And then, I wanted to take another job, which honestly was a lot less stress. So it was definitely a
yeah,
good move when it comes to that, having a job that is less stressful, especially when you're already dealing with the daily stress and nightmare of not having your child here. So,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're speaking from more of a positive story or outcome, for yourselves on how you were able to keep moving forward. Where
Right.
a lot of folks I know, and just from personal experience, I know that have unfortunately gone through this, and it's almost like they're done for. Like
Yes.
they just pack up their bags, go in
Yeah.
this deep dark hole of depression, and
Yes.
it's almost like there's nothing you could say to that. It's terrible and it's totally understandable, but some folks can rebound and others can't. So I'm
And
glad you
Brian,
brought that up.
and thank you for saying that too, because that's actually another reason why I do what I do, is because I know there are some parents who would like to do certain things, but they can't because of exactly what you just said. And so somehow, I don't know how, but somehow I'm able to have energy to do these various projects, to get out there, to make myself more vulnerable really than what I want to, but I feel I
Hmm.
have to, because there are others who can't. And I feel like
Yep.
I need to be their voice as well. And I need to, if the parents allow me, with their permission, share their child's story as well. And so that people know that this happens to all different types of families. So, but that's definitely, other families are, and parents especially, are definitely, another reason why I do what I do. No doubt about it.
Sure. No, and kudos. I tip my hat to you for doing that and stepping up for the cause. And so where can everybody find you if they want to learn more about you and the cause and Team Vienna? Where can they find Dr. Denise?
Yes, thank you. So one is our website, which is www.vienna.team. And then also the SUDC Coalition website, which is www.sudccoalition.com. So those are two good ways. And then also I am on Facebook. So there's a Team Vienna Facebook page, SUDC Coalition Facebook page. I have my own personal Facebook page as well. And I'm also on Instagram with Team Vienna for SUDC Awareness. I'm also on LinkedIn. So there's definitely multiple ways people can get in touch with me. And many people have, especially when say it's a patient or a friend or somebody who, there's an unexplained death. I find that people are contacting me, which I welcome, because then I can help them the best I can and get them the resources that best fit them, and just do whatever I can to help.
Great. And we'll definitely share those addresses in the footnotes for today's show as well, so everybody could continue to follow you.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Yep. Well, I thank you again for coming on the show, and especially sharing, such a personal story. But I do believe that it's going to help a lot of people by sharing that message. So thank you so much, Dr. Denise.
My pleasure. And again, thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share my story. Thank you so much.
Yeah, our pleasure. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Caderna podcast. I'm your host, Brian Caderna. We were happy to have you with us today. Please keep spreading the message. Tune in each week. Please leave us a nice review. Tell a friend, and we'll keep the show growing in the positive manner. Once again, we had the pleasure of speaking today with Dr. Denise Wunderler, and we will see you next week. Take care.
The Caderna podcast is for informational purposes only. Individual situations may vary, and the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guardian and its subsidiaries do not provide tax, legal, Social Security, student loan, mortgage, or real estate advice. Listeners should contact their own tax, accounting, or legal advisors or the Social Security Department in this matter. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. Brian Caderna is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, Pass, 300 Broadacres Drive, Suite 175, Bloomfield, New Jersey, 07003. Securities, product services, and advisory services are offered through Pass, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor. 973-244-4420. Financial representative, the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Pass is an indirect, wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Caderna Financial Team and International Planning Alliance, LLC, are not affiliates or subsidiaries of Pass or Guardian. Caderna Financial Team is a division of International Planning Alliance, LLC, a general agency of Guardian. Pass is a member of FINRA, SIPC. California Insurance License Number OK04194. Content of the Caderna podcast is copyright of Brian M. Caderna, all rights reserved. Any redistribution or reproduction of part or all of the content in any form is prohibited without prior permission from the Caderna podcast. The views and opinions expressed herein may not be those of Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. Guardian does not verify and does not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the information or opinions presented herein. Any third-party materials referenced cannot be endorsed or verified by Guardian and are used as the opinion of the author. Guardian, its subsidiaries, or affiliates do not provide or issue or advise for mortgages. This material contains the current opinions of the author, but not necessarily those of Guardian or its subsidiaries, and such opinions are subject to change without notice.